But first, let's take a look at this interesting sign. Something to do with these vegetables. Huh. Hanuisa. Well, I can say that one of the great things and bad things about having a YouTube channel is that I get comments. Some are good, some are bad, some are funny, some are sad. And last week I posted a video titled, "Why Am I Still in China?" To which there were quite a few comments, one of which stood out, a lengthy comment that touched on a few things that I felt needed another video response in order to fully explain. So in this video, I'm going to explain a few of the things, or at least clarify a few of the things about why I'm still in China and what it's been like to live here. So the first part that was addressed in this comment that was posted, a couple days after the video went up. "Chill, bro, your beard is a novelty. They're not looking at you. Well, they are gawking at you, of course, but not out of any sort of xenophobia, belligerence, or antagonize you, but mostly out of curiosity." It's true. Here in China, typically what will happen if you ever travel, you'll be stared at quite a bit. The issue isn't so much being stared at, it's having your picture taken without your permission. I mean, in the United States and Canada, if you did that, you'd probably get into some trouble, despite what other people might think about the publicness of social media. If you're taking creep shots, you're going to get in trouble with the cops. That happens here, where people will see you and they'll take a picture of you, and it can be a little bit, I don't know, aggravating, I guess you could say. But going beyond that, regardless of the pictures or the no pictures, like basically, you're nobody, and they're taking pictures of you for some reason. It'd be different if you were a movie star, you did something spectacular, but you just woke up and you're walking down the street getting a feed, getting some breakfast, and then all of a sudden people are taking pictures of you already. In the video, there we go. In terms of the beard, I mentioned in the video that it wasn't just nowadays with the 16-inch beard was what you see now. It was prior to this as well, that a lot of people would just look. Now, this comment about it's not out of xenophobia, belligerence, or to antagonize me, that's true. Because I guess in some parts of the world, people would stare at you with this sort of, maybe not distrust, but they don't like you being there, basically. They have these sort of ideas of who should be around them, and if they're staring at you like this, then they're sort of implying that you shouldn't be there. Not xenophobia, not belligerence, not antagonization, but certainly one of the problems that arises in this situation is, how do you break down the communication barrier? Let's face it, Chinese is not an easy language, and if you don't know how to say anything more than ni hao, zemayang, actually even saying zemayang is a high-level sort of response, and something that's reserved for friends only. So if someone's staring at you, you smile back, and they're like, hi, ni hao, where are you from? What's your 你的工作是什么? Like, what do you do for work? So you answer that, hey, my name is this, I'm from Canada, I do this type of work, I'm an English teacher, and they're like, oh yeah, look at English teachers. And they may or may not continue on to the other conversation or the other questions of how much money do you make? Are you married? Do you have children? Which are pretty common in several parts. Now, they're not trying to do anything more than to ask the most common, basic questions you would ask of anyone around the world. I mean, think of, in English, how many times have you met someone who's like, oh yeah, so are you married? Do you have kids at all? And that's a very common question. So it's not unique to China and Chinese, let's put it that way. Now, the one interesting thing, or the one part about living in another country, is that this whole staring thing is part and parcel of, I guess, not just the novelty of us here being in China, but also the novelty of us being in so many different places. And by that, I mean, when you start traveling, not just traveling, but when you go live somewhere, you're going to start traveling, you're going to be in a lot of different places. And what happens is that as you travel and accumulate experience, and that accumulated sort of aggravation of being stared at, having your picture taken, going through the same conversation 16, 17 times a day, for them though, you are still maybe the first or maybe even the second person that they've ever seen in that area. Meaning that you can travel to 16 different cities and have the same 16 conversations, but you're going to meet 16 different people, but you are still the same person with the accumulation of those 16 experiences, if that makes sense. So getting past this whole xenophobia, not xenophobia thing, yeah, the beard does draw attention, and I can say that there are probably a few reasons why, not only that my beard draws attention, but the reasons why Chinese people typically don't have beards. Number one, the image of having a beard like this is typically associated with people who may or may not have quite a bit of money. Number two, having a beard like this is typically something that, well, most Chinese people wouldn't have. Whether or not they can grow a long beard or whether or not they'd want to grow a long beard is another question. But I think third and most importantly, most women hate it. Notably, my girlfriend hates it, and given the chance, she would cut it off without a hesitation. And I suspect that a lot of Chinese gentlemen are under the same sort of pressure to basically have to be clean shaven, not just for work, but because their wives or their partners are, you know, heavily suggesting, cut that rug off your face there, bro. Dage, husband, partner, whatever you are. So the long beard isn't just a now sort of situation. I was being stared at before, and this is not just unique to me. A lot of people, I mean, of all races have said that, yeah, they get stared at all over the place, whether it's on the subway here in Beijing, or especially if it's traveling outside of the country, outside of the bigger cities as well. The comment goes on to talk about Xinjiang and my issues being in Xinjiang. Like I mentioned that the only time I had a run-in with authorities was in Xinjiang province. And there were two in particular. I cannot remember which cities they were. Whether it was, well, there was two. I'm not sure if it was Urumqi, but there was also one in the Taklamakan Desert where I was on a bus tour down from, I can't remember the two cities. I think we were going down to Houtian, and along the way there is a truck that fell over, or some sort of crane fell over, and I took a picture of it. So the cops actually took my camera and demanded that I delete the picture before they would let the camera go, and before I could continue on with the bus. Now keep in mind, the traffic was blocked, so we couldn't go anywhere anyway, and I mean, the bus would not have waited for me anyway. So that was one issue. But the other issue was when I think it was Urumqi, that I left the hotel without my passport, out of the idea that I didn't want to lose my passport just walking down the street or anything. So instead, I was like, I'll just go get a bowl of noodles and then come back to the hotel right away. What could possibly go wrong? Oh, well, let me tell you. Along the way, there was a Mr. Soldier Man who who saw me, and he's like, well, you don't look like you're from around here. And again, not a very long beard at that time, but he stopped me and asked me for my passport. This is all in Chinese, and prior to my Chinese being even half of what it is these days. So what ensued was a little bit of a back and forth. Now, there was no pushing or anything, but I did get on my knees and going, why would you why are you doing this? And this ended when a black car showed up, and I imagine it was the guy's boss. And some words later, blah, 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 he's like, next time don't leave without your passport, sort of thing. And now again, this was all in Chinese, it wasn't in English, so I have no real understanding or reason why that happened at all. It's just something that did. All right, you got to cross the street. 2 lanes. Oi, that car just went through a red light. That's not allowed. So in terms of accessing or going to Xinjiang and having those issues, that was why that happened. It was because I didn't have my passport, and that was, I guess, had I had my passport, maybe that would have changed something, but they still would have stopped me and asked me for like why I was in Xinjiang. Now the other thing, the comment goes on, he says that, oh, just look at what the Western media is doing with its hate and influence campaign. Can't deny that. So again, my Xinjiang trip was back in 2015. So prior to a lot of the things that you could say that the Western media has been publishing about China and its nationalities, sort of thing, is ethnicities, and sort of its issues within the Xinjiang province. So I don't think that's a very valid comment or a very valid excuse for the way that I was approached in Xinjiang. Now, taking pictures of accidents, they didn't like that. Okay, I get you. But no passport and no English going on, well, that's a tough situation. I mean, yeah, I should have my passport. Technically, you're supposed to have your passport with you all the time. The issue is, I don't want to lose it. And if I lose my passport, what's worse? Not having my passport, or having my passport in a hotel where I know where it is, or losing my passport somewhere Urumqi and I don't speak Chinese at all, so what happens then? I don't even want to be in that situation, let's put it that way. Let's take a walk through the park. He goes on in this comment, I detect a small, second, I do find your demeanor a wee bit belligerent and contentious. I detect a small but not insignificant undercurrent of disdain or displeasure with the Chinese people, or perhaps it's the Chinese authorities for which you harbor the negative feelings. Interesting. I think the belligerent and contentious, I would love to disagree with that, but I think a lot of people would say, yeah, Steve, you do come across like that, but we would never say that to you because we know you'd get pissy about it. Which is pretty much true. Now, the issue with this belligerent and contentious, okay, belligerent to me kind of speaks of being drunk all the time, and yeah, I can't really deny that one. Contentious, yeah, well, I do like to state things as well that may or may not run with or against the current thinking, or may not run with the current thinking. But this idea of a small but not insignificant undercurrent of disdain or displeasure. There are quite a few issues that, let's put it this way. You come to China, and if you are at all worldly people, that you have, I don't know, read the news or kept up on current goings on in things worldly, then you'll no doubt have an understanding of China, the Chinese people, its culture, and the current issues facing the country. When you come to China, you realize that you can't really talk about those things too much. And it's not because that you'll get in trouble immediately, it's simply because the current of thinking is we don't talk about those things. And those are largely issues that need to be resolved. Can they be resolved by, I don't know. Well, see, that's the thing, is like, how do you resolve these things? I can say living in China has made me appreciate the things that other countries present themselves as doing. And oftentimes we contrast China with the United States in terms of its economy, in terms of its progress, its development, and usually its governance as well. Now, I have to say that China, in all of its, and in this comment it says that Western media is doing, doesn't really paint China in a very flattering way. True, very true. And I've mentioned this many times before on this channel. I'm not the only expat who would say this, but if you at all want to understand China a lot more, first of all, put down the newspaper. Second of all, get your visa. Third of all, come to China and check it out for yourself. It's a very different country. And as I've mentioned in other videos, again, with these topics, sensitive topics, I don't need to say them exactly. You could probably look them up for yourself. It comes down to, if you're going to come to China, are you going to spend your time talking about those things that no one can solve right away? Or do you want to find out what Chinese people eat for breakfast and where? And how do you say hello and stop people staring at you, and instead figure out, hey, that Bao An or that janitor over there keeps staring at me. How do I actually go talk to the guy? Like, that sort of information, because that to me very much humanizes humanizes life, I would say, that you're able to talk to the Bao An, to the police officers, not the Bao An or the security guards, not the police officers who are different, but the janitors. I'll tell you, even by doing that alone, talking to the Bao An is one thing, but talking to the janitor, talking to the shopkeepers, even Chinese people wouldn't be doing that, and that already puts you on a very different sort of group of people if you learn to talk and like have conversation with them. Now, the other thing is that if you do that, what could happen is that you will start being called a spy, because only spies would be so interested in how people are living their lives, what they're doing, what their children are, what their money are. What do you think about life in Beijing right now? Oh, who would ask that question except a spy? So it comes with the territory of being able to speak the language, but not understanding the implications of speaking the language. So belligerent, contentious, well, I'm not going to deny those allegations, but certainly, yeah, I will say that it's been one of these things that, yeah, maybe I could be a little bit more gentle, and I have become more gentle over time. I think I've, lessened my contentiousness, my willingness to get into an argument about things. As you may have noticed with the YouTube comments, because there are a lot, I get quite a few. Some of them are like, they point out like, oh, you're so brainwashed by your Western media. I'm like, yeah, but if I read the Chinese media, I don't think I'd be any less washed of brain, to put it simply. Now, in terms of my disdain or displeasure with the Chinese people or the authorities, I think it's one way to sum it up is like, have you ever met someone happy with their government? that's one way you could sort of look at it. The other thing in terms of dealing with the Chinese people, there are, over the last couple of years, there have been a few things that have happened in China that weren't here, or that developed over time since my time being in China. So I got here back in 2014, but over that time we've had the pandemic. We've also seen, like, Beijing has hosted the Olympics once again, which was a big thing for the city. Sadly, it was during the pandemic, so I never got to go. I hardly even watched it on TV. That's how little attention was paid to it, let's put it that way. Two major things. One was the white people privilege. This was around the time of the Black Lives Matter protests in the States, that there was a large pushback against being white, and specifically being a white man. And I remember having people say this to me, saying, well, you have your white man, you have your white people privilege. And I was sitting here going, yeah, it's interesting. I am treated very well here. I mean, most people don't spit at me, which is good, thank you, I appreciate that. But a lot of the Chinese people I meet seem to come from one ethnicity. They're all Han. Interesting. But they never seem to talk about that. Okay, fair enough. Now, the other thing is, over the last couple of years, and this is no doubt part and parcel of, the government is sort of promoting this, well, maybe not promoting, but not squelching it, I guess you could say. And you can see this happening in other parts of the world as well. The United States comes to mind, Russia comes to mind, globally, and that is nationalism. So what does it mean to be a nationalist? Do you just simply like your country, your culture, your people, your language, your history? Or is it something that has to do with, like, we love our country and culture so much that you shouldn't be here, you're poisoning the well? I have lived in China for 10 years. I don't think I've never felt unsafe in the sense that people see me, see my skin, sometimes they assume that I'm American or Russian. But I've never felt unsafe because of where I come from or my skin color or anything along those lines. Is that white people privilege? Quite possibly. The other thing is that I don't think the general populace cares. I think people are kind of like, wow, I mean, yeah, you're white, you obviously don't come from here, but second of all, it's like, what, you came all this way, why'd you come to China? Like, you could go anywhere in the world, why would you come to China? And usually my response is actually quite simple: work and money. Maybe women as well, but mostly work and money. And it's that hasn't really changed over the years. The fact that China, as I've said in other videos before, it's been easy to live here. It's been easy to make money. It's been easy to make consistent money, even with the double reduction policy a couple of years ago that all but crushed the ESL industry, the education industry. But it's been consistent even throughout the pandemic. Although companies did go out of business, schools went out of business as well. Mine didn't, and I was fortunate enough to be in a position where I could make that choice of staying in China and thriving, prospering in China. I did not suffer as much as other people who did throughout the COVID pandemic. Now, the thing about the COVID pandemic brought up another issue of this nationalism, foreigners, being aware of foreigners, germs, and the beard, of course, again. So I recall, and I wasn't the only one who experienced this, but during the COVID pandemic, a lot of times if I was walking outside, if I was maskless, or even if I had a mask on, because mask mandates weren't always in place, typically what would happen is the Chinese person would put the mask on over top of their face, like they'd cover their face when they walked by me, or they would give me a very wide berth. That is, they'd be walking along the street and then they would literally walk around, make a semicircle just to get away from me. Now, is this because I'm a white foreigner? Is this because I'm obviously not Chinese? Or is it simply good hygiene, germaphobe, I don't want to catch the virus that everybody else is catching, because we all know someone who probably died from this COVID virus, the bat virus, or whatever you want to call it, that was going around for so long. Now, again, is it nationalism? Is it germophobia? Is it simply good hygiene? I don't know about that. The one thing that that was very common and still happens, and I think this might have to do more with the way that these articles are written. There are a few expat-centered news agencies, not news agencies, but publishers, newspapers, websites, WeChat accounts that talk about foreigners coming over and having the virus, or foreigners being arrested for not wearing masks. The one thing is that when you hear that word foreigner in a place like China, who do you think? What skin color are you thinking about? I've asked this question to other people, and typically it means that if you're in China and they refer to a word like foreigner, they mean people who are not Chinese, and well, that's white people typically. However, what they weren't saying was that these foreigners were often returning students or Chinese people from overseas that were coming back, so they were foreigners, and then they came back. That's not how those news articles were being presented, which could be a little bit, I don't know, disgruntling a little bit. So the comment goes on about nasty behavior or banter, and these guys are playing hacky sack. So I don't know how I'm going to get around here. I don't want to get whacked. Okay, quickly. Quiet ER, quiet ER, quiet ER, quiet ER. So this comment goes on about how nasty behavior is everywhere, which is very common for, I would say Chinese people, but I don't think it's just Chinese people. I think it's a very common argument. Well, but that happens everywhere. Yeah, true. Everything happens everywhere, all the time, every place. Okay, good. So then, what's the issue then? Take a look at this train. I like this one. They just put this one in after the pandemic closed or ended. They opened this whole park, and this is the half train. Ain't that neat? Can you go in? I don't think you can. No. All right. I know. All right. So he goes on to talk about this nasty behavior, this banter that happens just about anywhere, and it's true. I mean, you don't need to look very far to see the same sort of vitriol coming out of the United States, or even out of Canada, or in parts of Europe, where, you know, there is sort of the easiest excuse you can have for why things are going bad is to blame the foreigner, whoever they are, wherever they are. Well, it's the foreigners, because of all things, when foreigners show up, they're like, hey, let's work, let's make money. You're gonna pay me to do something? Hey, they don't do that in my country. So, and I've talked to other people about, it's not so much the immigrant attitude, it's the willingness of people who have left their own country for any number of reasons. It doesn't have to be a malicious reason, it doesn't have to be a bad reason. It could be simply just looking for another opportunity, not just cultural, like, oh, I want to look at the world, I want to travel, and I want to experience life to its fullest. No, it could be like, hey, that sounds like a cool place to go. I've never been there, I've heard a lot about it. Not only that, got nothing else to do. I don't get paid very well here. Let's go over there and try to make a buck. So with that, coming over here, the idea of that if you are an immigrant or someone willing to move, you have a bit of self-initiative that pays off, not just in terms of, well, moving and experiencing culture and languages, but also in making money, because it does show that you are willing to get up and go. And quite possibly, if you have to move somewhere else, and especially if you have to support a family, you know, being able to work and put in the time, make the money so you could remit that money, to send that money back to your home country, to your family, it's like having a fire under your ass all the time. You just go. And again, being an expat, being a foreigner, being an immigrant, I mean, it's so easy to use those words to refer to certain people, but unless you try it, first of all, it's not for everybody. Not everybody can supplant themselves, move themselves from what they're familiar with to another place where they're like, I visually do not belong here, or visually am not from here, and second of all, I have no idea what they're saying and they keep on staring at me. What's going on? Where can I get a burger? He encourages me to ignore the nasty and the clumsy, but instead to engage and use that curiosity they have for me to build the ties that I could have and really experience the culture instead of fighting it. I don't think I'm fighting Chinese culture, but there is one thing I have to say about the fact that I have spent more time learning Mandarin Chinese than any other language. The excitement of arriving at your final destination. Ain't that cool? Final train destination. All right, time to get up, put the bed away, clean up. We're almost gonna be there. 20 minutes. We're at Beijing West. Quick, I gotta go pee. Right. Taking the train's actually kind of, it's a nice experience in China. They're not bad. They're mostly well kept. They're grungy. They're grimy, but they're not dirty. It's clean enough for a public train that you can. I mean, you don't want the 5-second rule on that train. 5 seconds is too long. As soon as it drops, you're like, leave it. It's for the ants now. It belongs in another world, not in our world. So in terms of engaging, using that curiosity, experiencing the culture, having learned Mandarin Chinese for so long, being Ukrainian Canadian, that it's a language. Ukrainian was a language I did try to pick up last year in 2023. Again, I revisited it with the idea that I was going to go to Ukraine for a couple of weeks, and I never did. Now, having learned Mandarin Chinese so much, and I've never talked about this, I was going to make a video about it, I think I have to, is that if I learn Mandarin Chinese, am I betraying my own country, my own culture, my own people, my own history? And that's not something I think a lot of, not just Chinese people, but a lot of expats think about when they move somewhere else, especially to a country such as China that has such a deep history and a culture, one that they proudly continue to this day and proudly sort of maintain. But as a Ukrainian Canadian, am I forgetting my roots by moving to China? Like, what would my grandfather say if he knew that I was studying Mandarin Chinese and Russian, of all things, rather than being able to speak Ukrainian? Now, God rest his soul, but the fact that I have a Canadian passport and speak English, regardless of my skin color, does allow me to work in quite a few places around the world. I was born that way. I didn't really have a choice in that one. I think in the United States I can get angry about not having a choice to be born, right? The rest of the world be like, yeah, we know. That's how boom boom works. And it's kind of fun sometimes, right? Philosophical wanderings about whether or not I'm betraying my country, its people, its history, and its culture, and all the other stuff aside, yeah, I have learned Mandarin Chinese for a long time, and I have no intention to stop just yet. Now, in terms of engaging and experiencing the culture, oh, and he actually finishes this post about maybe, maybe after 10 years being in the city, in the country, has made you as bitter and cold. Here it is. I'm new to your channel. Maybe I don't know you very well. My comments are just based on this video, just my 50 cents. Maybe 10 years has made you as bitter and cold as the Beijingese with life. Haha. Yeah, probably. I actually almost, and not just bitter like the Beijing people who see life changing and the world changing and the city changing. I would say, like most expats, it's kind of like you live somewhere for so long, you experience so much, and you're kind of tired of being stared at all the time. And you're paying for an apartment, so you're like, why would I go travel when I pay for an apartment living in another country? Yeah, you sort of start staying at home and not avoiding the culture, but not engaging with it and experiencing it the same way that you did when you first got here. And it's the travesty of being a long-term expat. That's simply what is so new and exciting when you first get here becomes kind of dull and mundane. So to like even figuring out how to use your bank app to pay your landlord so she stops screaming about how your contract states that you're supposed to pay 3 days ago. You're going, yes, and for the last 3 days I've been locked out of all the passwords that I have. How do I put this? But the bank is locked because due to its security measures, I can't access my money. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? So being a long-term expat sort of exposes you, or I guess builds this up where you become unamused, unmoved by being an expat, by what the culture has to offer. I know for a fact that I have to make more of an effort to get out a little bit more. I partially blame myself and this idea of starting a language vlog. Hello, train. The language vlog, as awesome as it is, to be able to flex my language muscle and my language skills, and to give you guys glimpses of what it's like to live in China, it does take up some time. I'm not blaming anybody except for myself, because I actually tried, I think I tried a couple weeks where if I didn't post to the YouTube channel, what would I be doing with my time instead? And I can honestly say, I think posting to the YouTube channel was a better idea than what I was doing with my time anyway. So the YouTube channel is not an excuse. It's me blaming the YouTube channel is only an excuse, and it's a weak excuse at best. In terms of engaging and experiencing the culture, the one good thing about being a long-term expat is that you start learning about the little things that happen in the country, and you become a lot more aware, and you're able to translate life experiences that happen here that take time to go through, because either because of the language barrier or simply it hasn't happened yet. Like dealing with delivery drivers who, when the delivery driver calls you and they're like, where do you live? And you're like, right here. Isn't it on the parcel? But they have no idea. So simply being able to ask them, where are you now? And they give you an answer, and you go, okay, turn around, go this way, go to the building on the far left of the compound. That sort of instruction, that simple instruction that you can do in your native tongue so easily. When you don't know the language, how do you communicate with the delivery driver and then understand his frustration with you for not being able to speak? Can you imagine the dread these guys have? They look at the name and go, oh, for sakes, who wants to deal with the foreigner? I mean, I don't blame them, because it's the same thing. Like if I had to go to the bank to wire transfer, oh my God, that used to take forever to do. Now they have a digital means to do it, which is a lot easier overall. So I think I've covered everything in this comment. I like the maybe 10 years has made you as bitter as the Beijing people. I would probably, yeah, I would agree with that one. But it also speaks to being a long-term expat again, that, yeah, I have been here for a long time. I don't go out as much as I used to, and I don't feel the need to, because I want to say I know what's out there, but I know that I am missing out on a lot. I'm not partaking in a lot of things simply because it's easier, it's cheaper, and I'm not gonna lie, I kind of like sitting at home, not doing very much, and working on the language vlog and working on my language skills. Literally 10 years I've been working on this language, still struggle through it. But learning Mandarin Chinese will do wonders for living in China. I don't know if it won't disable you. If you don't learn Mandarin Chinese, that won't disable you from partaking in some things, but it certainly won't open up as much. And if you learn Mandarin Chinese, if you learn Chinese to a high level, then you're going to be able to deal with situations that might otherwise be frustrating. And not only that, being able to read a bit in the language really does open up the world, open up the country, and open up your own understanding of the country, its culture, and its people a lot more than if you weren't able to read. All right, folks, I've been going on for quite a bit. I hope you guys enjoyed that. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe. I was thinking about doing some more of these walk and talks where I yak to the camera and hopefully explain some of the things about what it's like to be an expat here in China and an expat around the world, and being able to learn Mandarin Chinese as well. If you have any comments, concerns, or questions, drop them in the comments below. I'd be happy to get back to you and hopefully explain them a little bit. And if you like this video, give it a like, as it helps the channel, tells the YouTube algo that this guy is worth watching, or at least it's funny enough, and going, hey, look it, there's a white foreigner in China. That's nothing new. All right, folks, thanks for watching. Appreciate it. We'll do this again. Have a good one. Bye-bye.